Hello, I am Brian and I have been preparing students for the first certificate for the last 12 years, and I want to show you in this video some of my advice and tips in relation to the speaking part. There are 4 different parts to the speaking exam, and the exam will last approximately 14 minutes, so it's very short, but at the same time it's sufficient time to show your level of English. When you enter the room, you will have the interlocutor asking you the questions, and you will have another examiner in the room taking notes. This is very normal and it might be a little bit uncomfortable. Part 1 is very much an introduction, and the questions are very social, related to normal things like your family, your hometown, your hobbies, food, movies and things like this. Part 1 is for 2 minutes and it is questions directly asked to you and directly asked to your partner. There will be no speaking between you and your partner. They will be direct questions to each of you. A big tip for part 1 and for every part of the exam is to be as comfortable and as natural as possible answering your questions. A lot of people prepare their answers and this is not recommended. It's better to be spontaneous and to answer as naturally as possible. A brilliant way to prepare for part 1 is to go to many social interactions as you can, like meetups in bars and cafes where you have the opportunity to speak as normally and as naturally as possible about yourself. In part 2, you are given 2 pictures that you need to discuss plus a question at the top. You will have 1 minute to answer your question in relation to your 2 pictures, and your partner will then have 30 seconds to answer a question related to your photos and vice versa. This part of the exam is very important. First, you really need to understand perfectly the question. It is so important you understand very clearly and precisely exactly what is in the question, because you must answer exactly the question. Next, it's very important that you don't only describe the picture. You need to be more analytical in your answer. You need to understand the question perfectly and compare the 2 pictures in relation to similarities and differences, all in relation to the question. Be careful not to describe too much. That's not this part of the exam. So you should identify and talk about things that are similar in the picture and things that are different in the picture, all in relation to the question. You should also try to speculate as much as possible, so use your imagination as much as you can. I know some people say they don't have a good imagination, but this is important in this part of the exam. So you need to speculate and to use your imagination as much as possible in your answers. For example, modal verbs are very important in relation to speculation. You could say they might be, they may be, it is possible that, they could be, they must be. You can use lots of different verbs and expressions in relation to speculation. Remember, 1 minute for some people is very long and 1 minute for other people is very short. So you need to practice and you need to be comfortable with using 1 minute in your answer. Like all 4 parts in this speaking exam, it's very important that you use as much vocabulary that you can, specific vocabulary related to the picture and less common vocabulary. That is the secret to getting a higher mark. In relation to your grammar, you should also use less typical structures and use as much correct and fluent structures as you possibly can. Again, the 30-second answer in relation to your partner's pictures is very short, so you need to pay attention to the pictures, you need to pay attention to what your partner is saying, and you need to speak as quickly and as comfortably as you possibly can in this 30-second answer. Of course, practicing is very important for part 2. A good way to practice and to prepare is maybe to cut out pictures from a magazine or a newspaper and to practice with a friend, trying to compare the similarities of the pictures, the differences of the pictures, and try to create a question that might connect the 2 pictures. As I have said, 1 minute can be very, very short, so you need to be practicing and to be very comfortable with the pressure of time and try to speak as fluently and as quickly as you possibly can, all in this space of 1 minute. In part 3, you are given a question with some ideas connected to the question, like a mind map or brainstorming. You will have 15 seconds to read every part of the question first before you give your answer. Then you are expected to speak for 2 minutes with you and your partner in relation to the question and the ideas connected to the question. You need to be very prepared and careful for this section, because the secret for this section is the interaction between you and your partner in relation to the question. How do you interact with your partner's comments, and how do you respond to your partner's comments in relation to the development of the conversation? Vocabulary and expressions such as I agree with you, I understand what you say, I agree with you to a certain extent, I understand your point of view. These types of expressions that recognize your partner's contribution are very useful and important. This 2 minutes is very short and you need to be very prepared and ready for this intense period because your partner might want to speak so much and you might find it difficult to speak. So you need to practice and try to interact very well with different people and different personalities to try and speak as much as you can and fairly. You are not expected to speak about every part of the question because you do not have time. So the best advice is to focus on maybe 1 or 2 parts of the question and to answer in depth and as best as you possibly can in relation to those 1 or 2 parts. The theme for this part is interaction, so you will be penalised if you speak too long and you do not interact and engage with your partner. So it's essential that you engage and you use your time fairly and equally. In this part, you also do not have to agree. In fact, it's sometimes better when you have a disagreement because you're more passionate and you have your better point of view. In fact, after the 2-minute section, you will have another 1-minute question that you're expected to discuss and negotiate your answer. You do not have to have the same answer. In fact, you can have very different answers, but the secret here is negotiation and how you interact with your partner to find the solution. The next part is part 4, and this usually lasts approximately 4 minutes. The questions in part 4 will come from the interlocutor, and most of the questions will be very closely related to the topic in part 3. You could be asked a question directly, or you could be asked a question that you need to discuss with your partner. So you need to be flexible and ready to adapt to any question and any situation. This is again why spontaneity and flexibility and being as natural as possible is recommended. Again, you might have to speak on your own or you might have to involve your partner. So always be conscious and be aware of your partner and try to interact as much as you can and refer to the comments that your partner made. And that's it. After the 4 minutes are complete, that's the end of part 4 and that's the end of the speaking part of the exam. In relation to every part of the speaking exam, there is a certain criteria that the examiner uses, and this is very important. In the exam, the examiner will have 5 different criteria that they will be watching closely in every part of the speaking exam. They are grammar and vocabulary, discourse management, pronunciation, interactive communication, and global achievement. In the section grammar and vocabulary, this is very logical and understandable. Of course, you need to try and use as much correct grammar as possible and as much vocabulary that is relevant and important for each section. If you can use more complex grammatical structures and verbal tenses, this is definitely a bonus and a plus. For example, using structures such as the active and the passive, different conditionals, the perfect tenses and combinations of all of these will help you. You will receive credit and points for attempting and for trying some complex structures, even if there's errors and mistakes present. Similar with your vocabulary, you should try to use less common vocabulary and more specific vocabulary for each particular section. The best way to prepare for building and increasing your vocabulary and grammar is certainly to read. You should try to read as much as you can before the exam, read books, read magazines, and read as much as you possibly can. The discourse management section is of course very important, and this really means how you manage your answers and how you structure your answers. For example, do you answer the question specifically? So it is very important that you understand perfectly every question that you are asked. In this section, discourse management, linkers and cohesive devices are very important. For example, however, furthermore, in addition, as well as this. All these types of linkers and cohesive devices are very important in this section. The category of pronunciation is obviously self-explanatory, and it is very important because in English we have a lot of words that are not phonetic and cause a lot of problems in pronunciation. So you should try to prepare and practice and get advice in relation to your pronunciation as much as you possibly can. The 4th criteria, interactive communication, is crucial, particularly in relation to part 3 when you have to interact directly with your partner. Of course, interactive communication is equally important in part 4 where there might be a lot of communication and interaction with you and your partner. The secret here really, as I mentioned before, is the vocabulary and the expressions you use in relation to connecting your partner to your conversation and linking your partner's comments to what you say. This is difficult and it requires practice. As I mentioned, vocabulary such as I agree with you, I understand your point of view, it's a great comment that you make, however, I would like to say, I understand what you think, what do you think about this, what is your opinion about this, and vocabulary such as this which interacts and connects very well with your partner. You need to practice. This section really measures your level of fluency and how comfortable you are in lots of different situations. So again, a good way to prepare for this part would be to try and practice as much as you possibly can in real life situations, normal conversation, and try to be as comfortable as you can in normal, real conversation. And the fifth and final criteria is global achievement. This is a mark that is reserved for your overall performance. For example, if you are low in 1 point, the examiner can give you the ability to add to the score. In each of the 5 categories, you are marked from 0 to 5, 0 being very low and 5 being as good as you can possibly get. So each section has a criteria from 0 to 5. And that's it. That's as much information and advice that I can think of to give you in relation to the first certificate speaking part of the exam. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Remember, in total, it is approximately 14 minutes for all of the parts, and it's a very good exam. The exam really reveals your level of English. It's very difficult to hide and to pretend that you have a good level of English. This exam really examines you and tests you very well. As mentioned in part 1, rehearsed and memorized expressions are not necessarily good. This exam really is good for people who are spontaneous and very fluent and as natural as possible. And that's it. I have 12 years experience preparing people for these exams, and at the moment I am offering a course on patreon.com/admilioringles. It's a specific course dedicated to material, advice, exercises for the Cambridge First Certificate exam. You are welcome to join. It is on patreon.com/admilioringles. It's extremely good value. It's approximately €10 per month for 1 full lesson per week, full of content and full of material. I would be delighted for you to join and to support me. Also, if you have any questions, please contact me on social media or any of the channels, and I will hopefully be able to help. Thank you so much. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you have a very good day. Bye bye.